Perfect. So, welcome to this thing that we're doing right now. And as we're doing this, see if you can notice where your mind, the various parts, your body's at. And with that, see if you can take care that your body feels comfortable. You take up a position that suits you in this moment, and feel free to readjust as this proceeds. So occasionally I've given these meetings, meditations, invitations, even lofty names like non-dual IFS meetings. It's not important what this is. What's important is that you can attune to your inner wisdom in this moment in time, as you are. That doesn't mean sidestepping or bypassing parts. Parts are not separate from self as such. They shine with the wisdom of self. So none of these meetings are about attempting to get somewhere. Where you are is already perfect. And I don't just mean that in a physical sense, in your body, in the house, the car, the walk that you're on, or however you find yourself as you listen to this voice. I mean, where you are in being, in consciousness, is already perfect. What do I mean by being in consciousness? I feel one of the simplest examples of this is to speak about the three states: the waking, the dreaming, and the deep sleep. So when we fall asleep at nighttime, as the dream character, we might appear to be doing things, thinking things, running away from things, pursuing things. We appear to be doing. Now, upon waking, we realize that that was just a dream, and that what was playing out in our consciousness as doing was really just our being. Why is that relevant to healing? Why is that relevant to IFS? IFS is internal family systems, and it's a really fantastic framework for embodying the non-dual spiritual teachings, for teaching us to be in this world but not of it. But why is it relevant for us to be able to gain this perspective of ourselves as consciousness? And for those of you who know the IFS model well, perspective is one of the P's of self. It's a quality of self, inherent quality. The reason why it's relevant, because what we know of consciousness is that it seems to appear as an endless, ever unfolding fractal. And I think I've spoken about this previously, that sense of nested consciousness, layers within layers within layers. A bit like a Russian doll. So just as, let's assume that one layer into the Russian doll, there is us, you and me and 8 billion other humans. So one layer in from the outermost, there's us. Another layer in, there's all the characters, parts, even the ones that show up in our dreams. Another layer in, believe it or not, our parts have their own parts. And then another layer in, those parts in turn have their own parts. This is going inwards. Now, equally, we can expand our perspective outwards. So I said that you and I are not the outermost layer of the Russian doll, but the next one in. Who is or what is one out? In other words, whose dream characters are we? In whose mind? So in non-duality, effectively, we say that all the appearances within consciousness are one. Let's go back to the analogy of the dream. When we fall asleep at night and we dream about a character that has black hair and another character that has blonde hair, what is the substrate which colors itself with black and blonde? Is it not your consciousness? Is it not just your mind? In the same way, when we zoom one out of ourselves, this is the outermost shell of the Russian doll, we are the coloration or the patterns or the activity of that consciousness. And this is why I can say with such certainty that however you come to hearing this voice, it's perfect. It's already perfect. Let's take a little pause here. Let's take a little. That was a lot of words. Let's come back to this body. Come back to this heart. And really take a lovely breath. Notice what's happening for you as these words are appearing in your consciousness, in our shared consciousness. Notice if there's any protesting parts. And can you validate them? Can you say, yes, you're right? From the perspective that each of our parts is looking from, they are right, 100% right. So the compassionate, the loving approach to this non-dual teaching would be to validate, would be to accept, to welcome. So often in the non-dual teachings, we speak about illusions and Maya, these inconveniences that apparently make it very difficult for us to be spiritual beings. How can that be? How can anything in consciousness be an inconvenience? Imagine the dream character saying to you, oh gosh, I'm really sorry, I'm such an inconvenience to you. This is a more compassionate approach to consciousness, to being. because everything is true from the perspective of its point of view. And isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful that we have this multiplicity, that we have this diversity? Imagine if we were all just air, thin air. Who would go to watch a movie about one particle of air talking to another particle of air? And of course, by me saying talking, I'm already giving them human tools. Particles of air don't talk, except when they embody us. We really are beautiful and perfect in the view of consciousness. And that includes the perspective of our parts that don't feel so perfect, that maybe carry some feelings of shame, unworthiness. So the non-dual understandings that I try to share in these sessions are not dogmatic, they are pragmatic. They mirror the felt experience of myself as consciousness. And that doesn't elevate it. It doesn't, consciousness doesn't mean it's something better than quote unquote being stuck in a part. It's, these sessions aren't about attaining some perfect form of consciousness. Consciousness already is perfect. You already are perfect by default. A lot of people come to non-dual teachings attempting to somehow get rid of or bypass parts of themselves that are deemed not to be so perfect or acceptable. But in our nested model of consciousness, this kind of the notion that we're all activity or phenomena in consciousness. Nothing exists that can be valued as better or worse, more enlightened, less enlightened. These value judgments can only exist from a more contracted or narrow perspective. And from that perspective, they are true. This is the inconvenient paradox. Yes, and I can't help but to smile at this. With a loving, kind, open heart. Yes, all these parts, yes. In Britain, we have this really fantastic children's books author, Julia Donaldson. And she has a book, The Witch and the Broom. And the witch has this magical flying broom, and every time she lands, she picks up a new animal to join her on this broom. And every time she says an enthusiastic yes, join me, you too, you are welcome. And one by one, these wounded animals that everyone else had cast aside with heads hanging low, they approach the witch and says, is there any room on the broom for a frog like me, or for a dog like me? There's different characters. And they hang their heads low with shame, somehow having learned that to be the way they are is a shameful thing. And the witch enthusiastically shouts, yes! This is what self is like. Enthusiastic yes, every time. No matter how much the part may believe itself to be unworthy of self-love, unworthy of self's welcome, the self says yes every time. Because it sees parts as already perfect. But it also acknowledges the desire of the part to be healed from their burdens. It wishes that for the parts. And in so doing, it facilitates effortless healing for these parts. At the end of the story that I shared, The Witch and the Broom, because the witch had invited so many discarded animals to join her on her magical flying broom. At one point, the broom snaps midair. It snaps in two, and they all come flying down. And guess what the witch does next? She builds a brand new broom with a shower for the frog, a comfortable seat for the dog and the cat. This is what self is like. It spontaneously, intuitively knows what each of our parts need. So this is how the inner world is. It's permanently bathed in self's welcome. And although I said there's nothing necessarily to gain from non-dual teachings or from anything at all, it is possible to learn to ride or to slide the ladder of perspective. This is the perspective of our parts, which can be narrow. By narrow, I don't mean negative. I'm not implying any value judgment there. It's simply as compared to the panoramic, wide-angle view of the self. So if you imagine at one end of this ladder of perspective, we have the narrower, more focused, more detailed view of our parts with their various burdens. And at the other end, we have the expansive, panoptic view of the self. It's possible to learn to slide, zoom in, zoom out at will. And the more we can practice this ability to zoom out and expand our perspective when we're comfortable, when we're resourced, when everything's going well, in a quiet, meditative practice, the more we will be able to pull that out when we find ourselves contracting into a part, when we interact with our loved ones. So whilst I said there's nothing to gain, we're already perfect, and that's true. it may be beneficial for us as humans, or we do have to navigate tricky situations, to learn how to access more of self's perspective, which is naturally spacious, open, flowing, welcoming, compassionate. From the perspective of consciousness, does it matter if we learn these tools? I'll ask it in this way. Upon waking up from your dream, does it matter if in your dream the dream character learnt something or not? And of course, the answer to that is the both and, yes and no. Here we have another paradox. Why would it not matter whether the dream character has learned something? Well, the dream lasted about 20 minutes. You'll probably never have that dream ever again in your life. And apparently it doesn't affect your waking state. It doesn't affect your being. And because everything is linked, to some extent, dreams do have an effect on us. Maybe you recollect in this moment waking up from a nightmare. It can take a good while for the body, for the nervous system to settle down after waking up from a nightmare. So clearly dreams do have an effect. The quality of the dream can affect the dreamer, us. And sometimes people can have a repeating nightmare. So clearly this effect isn't just a short-term thing where your heart races, but then after 20 minutes or so, it settles down. Some people can ruminate on bad dreams for quite a long time. And so on some level, yes, the activity of consciousness seems to have some kind of a relationship with all the apparent points along this nested model of consciousness. A little bit like Indra's net. If we tap one point, or if we do something to one point on this Indra's net, it will affect all the other points to a lesser or greater extent. Again, an invitation to just reset. That was a lot of talking. Come back to the heart. Come back to the sacredness. Come back to this here and now. If you can feel your heart beating. Attuning to the breath. Attuning to this sense that everything is already perfect as it is. Allow yourself to sigh. Allow yourself to yawn. Allow yourself to be fully human. Unfolding, flowing like a river, moment by moment. Now I'm yawning. Now I'm sighing. Now I'm thinking. Now I'm planning. Now I'm scratching, itching, moving, twisting. We're permanently cascading down the mountain of consciousness, rolling, shape shifting, expanding, contracting, becoming, unbecoming. Why does it matter? Why does it matter whether we have a good dream or a bad dream? Why does it matter whether parts have a good experience or a bad experience? I just want to quickly add, there's no right or wrong answer here. These are not trick questions. Why do we practice meditation, spirituality, non-duality, IFS, and all the other therapeutic models that we have? Because on some level, it does matter. On some level, it doesn't. But to our parts, it matters. And this is why self isn't content with seeing our parts suffer. This is why self has this actionable quality. Self has this intention, a desire for our healing. Because self knows that to our parts, It matters. And this is why we engage in all these practices, because on some level it matters. We can say everything is just consciousness. And that's a very easy thing to say. And yet when we're facing troubles in our lives, statements like these don't really help. In the embodied perspective of a part, that is feeling pain and overwhelm, it matters that self comes running like the perfect parent. You imagine our parts like 2-year-old little children running around playing, selves overlooking. Now imagine one of the little children trips and falls, grazes their knee, starts crying. What kind of a parent wouldn't go up to the 2-year-old child and start to comfort it? What kind of a parent would say, well, this is just consciousness, so this isn't real. This is Maya. And so we're back to this both and. At one level, it's important and it matters. And at another level, it is true. It's activity and consciousness. One doesn't have to offset the other. We're not about dogmatic dichotomies here, pitching one versus the other. That's not what these teachings are about. This is about softening to the both and to what needs to be done for the comfort, for the benefit, for the safety, for the well-being of our parts. Just notice how all that sits with your inner world. And whatever's here is perfect and welcome. whatever your parts need. If they need to rest, if they need to move around, stretch, yawn. See if you can generously offer that to your parts. Really follow their lead. When we're hiking, when we're mountaineering, there's a general rule that is wise to follow. And the rule is this, that we go at the pace of the slowest person of the group. We attune, we align with those who need us the most, who need to take a slower, more careful path. Self has infinite resources to be able to offer that to our parts. Not only that, self is able to simultaneously attune and give that which the fastest part needs and that which the slowest part needs. It's not as though it's a queue, the waiting line for healing. Knocking at heaven's door. That's not how it plays out in consciousness. In self, everything happens all at once. There is no queue. There is no waiting room. It's possible for self to be present for all the parts at once in the same time frame. Why is that? Because self is both wave and a particle. The wave aspect is the one that effortlessly attunes and provides everything for our parts. The slowest, the fastest, the in-between. Self as a particle takes a more part by part approach. Though in truth the two are not separate from each other. Self is a wave and self is a particle. We only speak about this for teaching purposes. In reality, Self is self. So if you imagine you're viewing this mountain from afar back, and you see some people are at the top of the mountain, some people are halfway up the mountain, some people are at the bottom, some people are at home, not even anywhere near the mountain. Self's got it all. Self's got that panoptic view of the entire field of your finite consciousness. The waveform transpersonal self has an even wider field of view, even beyond the confines of your body. So take heart that no matter whereabouts along this journey up the mountain each of our parts are, self caters to each one precisely and perfectly. Already. As we come to the end of this meditation, then see if you can notice whereabouts your parts are on this journey, on this path. And if it feels right, see if you can send gratitude to these parts. You can let them know that you see them. You can start to return to your body, to your breath. Coming back to the space that you are in. Thank you for joining me.